Hello and welcome to the Gaago analysis show. Delighted that you're here to join me today to go through lots of the clips from the previous weekend's games. Joining me this evening is Aaron Kernan, a Gaago veteran at this stage. Aaron, welcome.
Dean, good to catch up.
Yeah, looking forward to this now. Insightful bits of analysis now for everyone.
Yeah, you'd like to think so. So far everything has been running fairly smoothly between the new ratified show and then obviously this new piece of analysis that Gaago is going to be putting out on a weekly basis. So yeah, great to see new faces and plenty of insight and experience from the likes of yourself.
Okay, right. Well, let's crack on. Let's start. Let's get the process started. Look, I know some of the games this weekend probably weren't as competitive as we would have hoped for, particularly in some of the games we're going to analyse. But in terms of, you're still seeing plenty of trends that are starting to prop up with teams. Sort of some of the things they're working on throughout the National League, and then obviously championship focus now. There's a bit of shift in mindset in terms of they don't have the luxury now or the time to get as much practice in. So championship games become that little bit more important, especially with trying to time your run and trying to ensure that everything is going as smoothly as possible. So hopefully we'll be able to show some trends that we're starting to see from different teams. And I think everyone will be delighted to see that there's plenty of kicking starting to happen, and some good, some not so good, and there's kind of the risk rewards in terms of the kicking it and kicking it away. So look, it was obviously the Dublin Meath game the weekend. It became a bit of a non-event, but just from the offset, Aaron, like you could see that Meath a lot of men inside Dublin's 14-21 at times, and they had a massive emphasis in trying to kick that ball in early and really challenge Dublin full back line. Maybe the objective was to obviously once the ball went dead to be able to push up on Dublin's kickouts, but it was a trend that we seen throughout that first half. Sometimes it came off, sometimes it didn't. Now, look, Meath did turn over the ball quite a number of times, which resulted in Dublin going forward and getting scores. But you'll just see here, again, Ronan Jones, after offloading the ball, he's after drifting into the full forward position. Every Meath footballer, when they win the ball around this area, they're all scanning inside to see if there's anything on. Eventually, Jordan Morris spots something. He sees Ronan Jones inside with Ross McGarry, who he would have a substantial height advantage on. It doesn't come off this time. But again, looking inside the whole time. Look, as an inside forward, you want to get the ball in as quickly as possible. On this case, it's probably a silly kick. It's 4v1. It's a small man inside for me. It's probably not the ball that James Conlon wants to be going for. And Dublin just sweep that up, and obviously to get another opportunity to attack. Again, this is Ronan Jones. He's looking to kick the ball inside to that man coming out from the full forward line. But it's just forcing it that little bit too much. Dublin then naturally just, Scully is brilliant at this in terms of just transitioning out of the fence. There's very little pressure from me put on. And it results in a goal. And look, Dublin forced 28 turnovers on Meath over the weekend and got 2-8 from it. So it just highlights the importance of, obviously, yes, you want to kick the ball and look inside to your danger man early. But if you do turn it over, you're going to expose yourself to Dublin's running game and the threat of that. And look, scoring 2-8 from 28 turnovers is quite a high score to ship there, you know.
Yeah, and I suppose the one thing that stands out for me with that there is the first one, it works. Jones gets the mark. You can have a press on it. I don't necessarily think what they try to do after that is wrong either. And sometimes people would say, well, look at that kick pass. It's never on. We've given it away. I think a lot of what they did there was actually just the execution of the pass. Now, granted, the Conlon one to kick off the outside of your boot, that's a 55, 60 meter foot pass. Like, it's not the ball. That wasn't the ball for him at all. That's one where you can run it or you look for a different option. But definitely the other ones, they're your 20, 30 meter. There should have been pop passes in front of people.
Yeah, they were all in range. They were good foot passes. Like, yeah.
To me, right idea. Get your head up, get it into that sort of your outlet area where you're looking to bring your full forwards into the game. But that's not, for me, something you say, okay, let's stop kicking the ball into the full forward and go back to a running game again. That's something that you can work on. The fact that they're willing to win possession, get their head up and look for that pass. If it doesn't come off, you don't scrap it and go back to running and just being predictable, playing one style of football. you can earn that out in terms of maybe your full forward staying a bit deeper. But predominantly, it was just the pass in. They were overhit. It was a ball that someone couldn't win. So I wouldn't have too many complaints in terms of why they tried to do it, because you're looking to get as much ball into your full forward lane as quickly as you possibly can. It was just the execution.
Yeah, and it was probably a bit of a case of, look, there was probably 3, 4, maybe 5 turnovers in a row, and then naturally, you know yourself as a player when you're on the pitch and guys are still, you know, maybe forcing that little bit that maybe your response is not as good as it should be when they do eventually turn over the ball. And that's probably the disappointing thing from Meath's perspective, is that the press after the turnover maybe wasn't as good as it should have been, and they probably allowed Dublin just to get out of the fence a little bit quicker than maybe they should have. Had Meath maybe not as many turnovers, and a couple of them had maybe gone over the bar, or they got a couple of marks from it, perhaps their response to them turnovers might have been a little bit different. But
so they needed to be a bit cuter. What you boys in particular, you used to also, you got all your 15 back goal side, and they're not dropping back, but you just got back, that you made sure that you were facing whoever was in possession, and they still would have had 15 people to beat. So yeah, it didn't necessarily mean like sprint after and chase one person by yourself, but collectively get yourselves into a good position that you can all then go hunt the ball down and try and get it back again. Which it just seemed like once they lost it, it was individual from then on. You know, there didn't seem to be a collective in how they were going to defend that turnover.
Yeah, like on Bugler's goal itself, like, I mean, not once did a Dublin player have to nearly shift sideways with the ball. It was all going straight towards the goal, which ultimately, if an opposition is doing that on you, the chances of them getting the ball up to the scoring zone before you can get men back is obviously a lot higher. So as you said, the minute you turn that ball over, you got to be shifting guys out towards the sideline, get behind the ball, and just make it as difficult as possible, because ultimately you're most vulnerable when you turn the ball over.
Yeah, and obviously the stats that you talked about, the fact that of the 28 turnovers, Dublin hit you for 2-8, and particularly the goals, and that Bugler goal, like you said, if you're trying to, your whole plan is to get the ball in as early as possible, try and pen Dublin back in, and then particularly it's bad enough giving it away, but the goal, then it's a killer blow. People start to retreat into their own shell, and then obviously what happens in the second half is sort of, it's inevitable off the back of it.
Yeah, I suppose just moving on to the Dublin kick out and the press, it was obviously really effective in the second half of the game. Look, naturally enough, there was question marks after the Derry National League final, but Dublin just continued with this high press. They're not going to just, you know, scrap it from what they've done over the last number of years. They're going to continue to press high, and they're going to continue to try and get the rewards from it. And you can just see they're flooding men up the pitch. There's probably 10 or 12 guys inside the Meath 65 or from the halfway line in, and it just becomes, you know, the opposition just gets suffocated. The keeper has no other option but to kick it to a contest, and when you're kicking it to contest, Dublin have got some big men out there, albeit James McCarthy and Brian Fenton weren't there the last day, but they've still got guys capable of winning the ball out there long. And look, you know yourself, when you turn the ball over there, like, you've got that forward momentum. It's a great opportunity to get scores. And Dublin got, I think, 6 scores off Meath, off the 11 kickouts that they won. So they did get a lot of joy off it. This is a good example. Like, I suppose against Derry, Dublin probably fell into the trap of maybe having 2 or 3 guys going for the one ball. You can just see the bit of learning there in terms of one jumper up, everyone else staying on the ground, fighting for the breaking ball, and either just trying to go with the runners that are looking to get in behind and gamble. So it was quite pleasing from Dublin's perspective. I think they would have maybe liked to have got a couple of more turnovers on the kickouts, which would have given them more opportunities to get scores. But all in all, you'd have to say, particularly in the second half, it was a much better effort from a press perspective.
Yeah, I was at the Dublin Kerry League game earlier in the year, and that was the biggest thing that stood out for me. Like, you have obviously your different templates of how people want to defend kickouts, but I thought they gave an absolute exhibition on their own and how to counter Kerry on that night, and they were ruthless in terms of once they got the ball. For me, an awful lot of what happens is if a team's number one option is movement and all your defenders are running all over the place, if everyone's picked up, Dublin were brilliant at that. Like, Dublin had always 4 inside the 45, and what a lot of teams do, they go zonal, but Dublin go zonal, communicate so well, but they're always on their toes with their hands up, and you're moving. A lot of teams will just stand in a position. That move in a couple of feet and the constant noise, the constant communication, it puts doubts in the goalkeeper, it puts doubts in the defenders, and it makes maybe where there is a big space seem like that space isn't there, and all they're doing.
A good zonal can nearly look like a man-to-man, essentially.
Yeah,
you know,
you put doubts into the defender who's thinking, geez, I don't have this space to break into. The keeper then, he's like, well, I thought there was a space there as I lifted my head and now it's gone. I think that's where they're so effective. And like, to be honest with you, nearly everyone does the same thing. But I think the energy, you're saying that maybe you're doing it this past few years or how good at it. I thought maybe there was a wee bit of lethargy from that Kerry game onwards in the league this year. I just thought they've been incredible in how they do it, and it gives them so much front foot football. And they punished Kerry nearly on every opportunity that night. For whatever reason, at the weekend it didn't come off, but they definitely have it down to a T. And I have noticed an awful lot of teams now who do the bunch and break in the middle of the field, on top of the press, which is very good. Dublin mastered that night, where Kerry always come outside the 45 and tried to run in. Dublin just left 4 players inside the 45 and they picked them off one by one. They did come running to them, and then Shane Ryan was left with no option but to go long. And like I said, at that stage, if going long is your second option, you generally always are outnumbered by the opposition, and they're the ones driving the ball back towards your goal, and all their momentum is taking them towards you. So that's
their objective is to force you along. They're going to have the extra number out there, and it really does. The onus is on those defenders to get free for that keeper if he is looking short in particular. But yeah, no, it's a good point.
Well, I was in Portlaoise myself for the other games, and I suppose we're all looking at what's coming down the lane, particularly in the Leinster Championship. The other semi-final, other than the Dublin Offaly game, is obviously going to pair Kildare against Louth. So I was there with Gaago for both games, and I got a good insight to them. But you're always trying to look and see, they want to get back. Like, they ran Dublin relatively close last year. Louth are looking to get the back-to-back Leinster finals like they've only been in 2 and since the 60s, I think it was. So they're trying to go back-to-back, which is massive for them as a county. But how are they going to improve? How are they going to make the big day, which is, we all assume, going to be against Dublin, a better spectacle and give themselves a better opportunity? And I suppose whenever the Kildare management team have had the opportunity to sit back and reflect on the day, they've been delighted to have got the win, particularly in the manner that they did, being down to 13 men, looking like they'd nearly lost the game, and still having the wherewithal to come up and engineer a late score. But there are areas that they will have huge improvements to make, and one of them I felt at the weekend, and this was particularly in the first half, was how they defend. Like, they were playing with a really strong wind. This is early on. This is the first score of the game, that Chris O'Brien ends up getting. But you can see Kildare players, they're back. Like, they have a +1. Everybody else is nearly manned up. But for me, whether it's communication, desire to get to somebody, that's the first score of the game. He's kicking into a breeze. I just felt that there should have been more pressure on him. This one
There's
here,
no danger of a goal there either. Yeah, it should be pressing.
Yeah. This one here is like an awful lot of teams, yourselves in particular, particularly the players on the far side of the field, they need to be stepping across more. Like, Wicklow had a player on the far sideline. He was never getting the ball. He was never danger. The danger was down the middle here. You have to be able to read where's the most dangerous player, where's the danger coming from, and that was Patrick O'Keefe coming straight through the middle at that stage. That's where the danger was. And you have to remember, they're playing against, or they're like, Wicklow's playing into a strong breeze at this stage, which should allow you to defend.
It's not a lack of effort. They're getting plenty of numbers back there. It's just more what they're doing when they're back there. That's the big issue. They're probably preoccupied with their men a bit. Yeah,
that's what you probably found an awful lot, is that they tracked their own man from maybe a foot or two long, too far. That player who's coming through the middle, you're not getting enough physicality on him. You're not getting your body in front of him to check a run, to make the next pass go backwards. And like, this is something that is going to have to massively improve against Louth. Louth got 4 goals at the weekend, 2 penalties. Should have had another penalty in the first half, and should have had a palm in at the back post. So you're talking like that was 6 clear-cut opportunities that Louth had created. So if they are to get to a Leinster final, that's one key area that there has to be a huge improvement. And then, or else, like I said, Louth, compared to what they were doing, or for what they've been doing this past few years. Really good running team, and Aaron Kernan at centre half forward for them definitely is a real added plus from someone who they didn't have last year. So I suppose the best thing that Kildare can do is they won this game, and you can be sure that their management team is sitting down, analysing that. It mightn't be easy viewing for some of the players who are getting beat quite easily in one-on-one situations there. But they're in a Leinster final, and it's given themselves an opportunity and 2 weeks where they can build and try and work on improving.
So Louth have a lot of danger men now in terms of the Ryan Burns, Mulroy, Downey. Like, they're all going to take a lot of watching. So naturally enough, Kildare are going to have to go man to man on those guys. But I suppose it's just more about when them lads are out of the play, it's just tucking in that extra 10, 15 yards to help the guy in front of you or beside you to get across and potentially get a double up. I think that's probably that's what Kildare needs to improve on the next day, because if they just continue to follow their men, the opposition, Louth are just going to pick holes. Louth are on the go a couple of years now. They're clever. They're a smart team. They've generated a really good football on IQ, and they'll take advantage of that. But the likes of Mulroy and Downey and these guys, they'll happily stand in the corner if they know that their man is going to stand with them, because ultimately it's just going to create a lot more space for the runners from deep to run through. So I think Kildare will just have to be wary of that, obviously, and try and work together a bit more.
Yeah, and then obviously on the flip side of that, there's clearly room for improvement in them. Coming up, like we're saying, they were playing with a strong wind at this stage. They named the full forward line of Kevin Feely, Dara Cow, and Daniel Flynn. I was assuming they're going to go route one. Let's get to the ball to number 10, 12 positions and put a couple of floated balls in. This one here, you see Daniel Flynn, the only player that they had up the field. He's positioned himself at centre half forward. They just left themselves that it was a running game. That's all they had. They didn't exploit the wind, or they didn't pen Wicklow back in near enough in the first half. Went in a close contest, didn't have a lead built up like they should have done, and I felt they were going to struggle in the second half. But immediately in the second half, then playing against the stronger wind, here's them winning a turnover in their own full back line and a man down. But they have way better shape. They've stretched the whole field continuously. And by them stretching the field, what you do is you put Wicklow into one-on-one situations where they have to come up and try and press you. One key area that I felt they can improve in as well is so they win the ball back in the fence, which is brilliant. But if you look up to the number 10 position there, this is Niall Kelly breaking. That foot pass is on, and it was on 2 solos earlier. Didn't give it. The foot pass is on again to Kelly. Kelly's movement was so smart all evening. The best player on the field. Now, ultimately, Darragh Kernan gets the ball, beats his man, puts it over the bar. But again, if you're trying to nitpick, that's what I'm saying. If you're trying to nitpick and you're trying to see how can they get quicker scores, simpler scores, like Niall Kelly's not looking the ball put on his chest. He just wants it put into space. And I found what he was so good at was he was running horizontal all the time. He was never coming showing, looking the ball as if he was running away from goal. He was running flat. So as he had it, he was in the half turn already looking to see who am I passing to on the inside lane. So small tweaks like that there, I think, are massive for them. And to be fair to Kildare, given the league campaign that they had and the amount of defeats that they had and morale maybe not being low, it is only human nature that maybe you play a wee bit more conservatively. So hopefully off the back of them getting the win, and particularly the manner and how they won it, with players missing, the sending off, that the confidence grows a wee bit in them. They start to express themselves a bit more and get the head up. But in terms of maybe that movement point, is obviously someone who was a top inter-county forward, not a half-back like myself. In terms of forward movement in particular, what would you have been trying to do in terms of how you moved inside, how you would have liked to have shown yourself to give your half-backs an option to get the ball in for your half-forwards?
Look, obviously, Niall Kelly, he's always been a really good guy to win balls in the link, and that's vitally important. Obviously, if lads aren't shown in the link, your transition is going to be slow, and you're going to allow the teams to get back as quickly as possible. So, Niall Kelly, he's running out towards the ball. He's running laterally in that link zone. That's the only time as a forward you should really have your back to the goal in terms of receiving the ball. Every other time after that, if you're running out towards the ball, you're probably not really helping your team in any way. So for me, I was always trying to receive the ball where I'd either be coming off an angle on the loop where at least if I see the ball, if I get the ball, I can see the goal, I might be able to get a shot off, or I'm seeing players in the middle of the pitch where I can play it to them and maybe get it back. So if I was just, the ball was just coming into me into the corner and I was just going straight back out with it, I wasn't really adding much value to the team. So you're always just trying to probe and find ways to receive the ball facing the goal. Whether that be just trying to run towards them on the ball and backdoor cutting. You know, the backdoor cut is probably the most used move now in Gaelic football. Every team is utilising and doing it because everyone wants to be receiving the ball going towards goal because teams will naturally foul you or you get opportunities to get goals. So I think it's probably just a trend from the Kildare team in terms of, look, everyone, they all want to get on the ball. They all want to make things happen. But sometimes you just have to be selfless in your ways in terms of, okay, well, is it the best thing for the team for me to run to the ball or run away from the ball? And, not everyone can be on the ball at one time, unfortunately. Forwards might only touch the ball 10 or 12 times. But if you only touch the ball 10 or 12 times and you get 3 or 4 scores, you'd much rather that than be on the ball 25, 30 times and not get one shot on goal. So it's trying to utilize, I suppose, your impact on the play and on the team. And I was always quite comfortable in that and not having that many touches. But when I got
patience, particularly as a forward this day and age, is huge.
Absolutely. And it was probably just trust from management as well to know that, look, he's doing this for the team. He knows the cornerback is just all over him. He's going to go into the corner. He's no problem doing that because eventually the cornerback will switch off. You'll get on the loop. You'll get your score. And you'll ease your way into it that way. So it definitely is a bit of patience. But I think if Kildare brought that element of patience to it and a bit of more selflessness up front, I definitely think their attack will be far better. Because, look, they've got some great forwards there. Aaron Kernan is a good as inside forward as there is. Ben McCormick comes back as well. So they've lots of options up there.
Yeah, obviously the second game was Louth against Wexford. It was very entertaining. I have to say, Wexford, how they played in the first half and some of the football they played, really pleasing in the eye and just went out to it wasn't as if they came out to park a bus. They granted they had the elements in the first half. It kept switching in Portlaoise the other day. But they give a great account of themselves. Louth sort of looked like they were composed, playing maybe a wee bit within. And just like you mentioned, it was a couple of those backdoor cuts. That's what created the goal opportunities where they were really good at leading out in front and then just doubling back into open space. And it's a delicate enough hand pass that's one bounce and you're running onto it. But again, from Ger Brennan, he obviously has to try and add and put his own stamp to what Mickey Hart and Gavin Devlin had done previous. And clearly there was no need to rip up a template hugely. There has been a really good culture now created within Louth, where all your best players are back playing for Louth, and physically you can see that they've stuck with it. They've stuck with the program and the condition of them. They've now brought themselves up to your top 8, your top 16 style of a team. But one of the things Gerard mentioned, and I picked up at it, particularly the first night they played against Armagh, should have won the game that night, but he felt there were opportunities to kick and to use the foot just to get the ball up the field that bit quicker and that bit swifter to the forwards who you just have mentioned, to give them that bit more space and time to create something. Against the wind the other day, obviously it wasn't on because of the weather, but this is the second half. Bevan Duffy, who has just come on, and straight away his head's up. That's off his weaker left foot. That pass probably isn't on all day long, but he takes it because you can be guaranteed that's something they're trying to work on. And straight away, it just goes past 5 or 6 Wexford players, has them all scrambling back. Now, the defence, and John Hegarty mentioned this after the game, the Wexford manager, he wasn't overly pleased with how they dealt with things. But Kieran Downey, his first instinct was straight to goal. But for me, just that quick foot pass, 30-metre foot pass, gets them on the front foot, but more importantly, has Wexford players that they're scrambling back towards their own goal all the time. And it definitely was something that was a huge addition to them and how they got the scores. This one again from Kieran Downey seems very simple, very basic, 35-metre bounce in front. but that's now 8 Wexford players who are all having to scramble back towards their own goal, to try and get organised, to try and communicate. Whereas an awful lot of teams now, they don't want to take that pass. They don't want to. They think there's maybe a risk. The man who started it to the initial pass to the wing, there he is, Aaron Kernan. So he doesn't stand out in the middle of the field and just think, okay, that's my job done. Let's see what happens from here. This doesn't happen by chance. It is clearly something that they're training on, they're being coached on. And for me, that's very encouraging because, yes, they got to a Leinster final last year. It's obviously a big day for the players, big day for the county, but they weren't happy with what they did. They weren't happy with the result, and they don't feel they give a proper reflection of themselves. So these wee small tweaks should hopefully put them in a position where they're really competing well against Kildare to get the option to play the Dubs. And just that final one from Liam Jackson, who just had come on, like we mentioned, Niall Kelly, that was just a flat run the whole way. He didn't attempt to run out to the pass. He just ran horizontal, ran flat across the full forward line, wins the ball, and like you say, just one step, hooks it over his shoulder. So definitely,
I don't know how much of that Louth would have done last year in terms of that scanning in from those positions. I think they were quite good. We would have played them in the Leinster final last year, and they were very good at holding onto the ball and holding possession and maybe getting the ball to the 45, maybe working it into the corner, coming back out, and then maybe looking for a diagonal type ball into box 14. But I don't think they were kicking as much into the link area around the 45 as they are this year.
You beat me to that question then, because I was going to say, well, obviously you played against them, you were planning for them. So in terms of what you would have seen, without giving too many trade secrets away from last year, so that is something that you probably could noticeably see off those clips in comparison to last year.
And as you said, like Jared just has to make subtle changes here and there, obviously based on his style of play and different things like that. Because obviously they've built massively strong foundations there in Louth. They're really competitive in every game they play now, and they'll really be fancying themselves the next day against Kildare. But that's just the obvious standout is their ability now to transition that ball just that little bit faster, or to move that ball forward a little bit faster via the foot. They were really good at keeping the ball, and they're actually excellent on the kickouts as well. They're really good on the press on the kickouts. So if they actually are moving that ball up a little bit faster, they're creating more scoring chances. They're getting more opportunities to press the kick out. You know, they should be improving based on what they produced last year. So it'll be interesting to see what they're like when they get back to Croke Park, because the wide open spaces really should suit the forwards that they have. Because I think those guys, the Ryan Burns, Downies, they've got more confidence than they even had last year. So that can only be a good thing for Louth.
The press and the kick out was a big turning point last weekend, even into the wind after they got a free. Obviously, they were playing into an extremely strong wind, so any scores they got was either from a free or from a mark, but it allowed them to get a press on, and like you mentioned, they were really effective with it. But again, you're trying to hark back to last year and see how they can make improvements. I know they were very annoyed over the press, what they did for yourselves for the kick out. They maybe went a wee bit too gung-ho and left themselves exposed at the back. That's something they can improve on. But Kieran Downey had mentioned to ourselves on Gaago after the game last week that Ger has sort of left it a lot player orientated, where they have done a huge amount right and have a really good culture within this group. And he didn't want to come in to rip all that up. He had a few tweaks that he wanted to make, but he's doing all those tweaks sort of in conjunction with liaison with the players. What worked? Where do you think you can improve? So everyone seems to be on the one page. So ultimately that's all you're looking for, is to see where you can make just small errors or small changes, small adjustments from last year. And the fact that they now offer up that kicking game a wee bit more, it means that you're making your opponent think. It's not predictable. Like you can't just sit off and know, right, which ultimately they're just going to run at us all the time. You're taking them into different positions, different situations, and offering up a different picture on how they're going to have to defend. So it'll be interesting to see what way it pans out against both teams.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, Aaron, and thanks to everyone for watching in. Hopefully you found myself and Aaron's insights quite insightful, and hopefully you'll be able to see them in action over the coming weeks. But that's it for the football show this week. Noel Connors will be up next week, highlighting some of the hurling. So best of luck and see you soon.